For 4 bitter years, the Duke of Harrowden had treated Lady Isabella Langford as though she were the very embodiment of deceit. At every ball, every dinner, every whispering assembly of the ton, his gaze would pass over her like cold glass, measured, polite, and utterly void of warmth. He never spoke her name. He didn't have to. The entire of London knew what she had done. She had jilted him, they said, in favor of a richer, older suitor, a man whose coffers were deep enough to rescue her father's collapsing estate. The betrayal had been the scandal of a season. The Duke of Harrowden, reserved, admired, and the most sought-after bachelor in England, had become the object of public pity. Lady Isabella bore the shame in silence. She still attended the musicales and garden parties required of her rank, but the laughter that once brightened her eyes had vanished. She moved through society's glittering halls like a ghost condemned to haunt her own past. None of them knew the truth. Not her friends, not her family, certainly not the Duke. Only a single letter carried the secret of what truly happened that night, the night her life had shattered. A letter written in tears and sealed in haste. A letter that had never reached his hands, until now. Lady Isabella Langford had been born into grace and burden in equal measure. The Langfords were an old house, respected but fading. Too many generations of honor, too few of prudence. Her father, Lord Langford, was a man of fine manners and ruinous investments. Her mother, a woman who measured worth by appearances. The Langford estate in Kent still looked magnificent from a distance. Wide lawns, marble pillars, ancient oaks. But step closer and the illusion crumbled. The paint on the window frames had begun to flake. The silver was quietly pawned, and even the stables echoed hollowly. Isabella had learned early that her beauty was her dowry. By 19, she had been presented at court, courted by half of London, and promised by her father to a match that would restore their fortune, one she had not chosen. Then came Gabriel Ashcombe, Duke of Harrowden. He had been different. Where others flattered, he listened. Where others spoke of her face, he spoke of her mind. During the spring season, he had danced with her twice at Almack's, an unmistakable declaration of interest. Soon his visits became frequent, his glances unmistakable. He was handsome, of course, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, with the quiet dignity that only old titles and lonely hearts possess. But it was his kindness that had undone her. He had once found her sketching roses in the Langford garden and spent an hour speaking of their meaning and heraldry, their symbolism in love. When he left, she had found a pressed rose upon her easel, its stem bound with a ribbon in his colors. It had been the beginning of everything, and though neither of them knew it then, the seed of every sorrow to come. In the quiet hours before dawn, Isabella would often sit in the Langford library, quill in hand, heart heavy with a longing she scarcely dared acknowledge. She sketched roses, she wrote letters she never sent, she dreamed of a life that might exist beyond gilded halls and whispered expectations. Gabriel Ashcombe, the Duke of Harrowden, had become the sun around which her small world orbited. Even in his absence, the memory of his voice, the low, deliberate cadence that seemed to understand her every thought, lingered like the scent of jasmine in the spring air. Yet their connection was fragile, bound by the expectations of family, society, and circumstance. Lord Langford, ever pragmatic, spoke openly of fortunes and alliances, weighing every word Isabella said against the coin of her future. "My dear Isabella," he would say, his hand tapping an aging ledger, "your marriage must secure the estate. Love is a luxury few can afford." And her mother, the Countess, offered veiled advice in silk and lace. "Charm, my dear, will only take you so far. You must wield influence quietly, as any lady worth her salt must." Even amidst this pressure, Isabella's heart had been stolen, not by ambition, but by a man who looked at her as though she were entirely unique, entirely alive. Gabriel, too, had his own burdens. The Duke's family was a fortress of expectations, a widowed mother with exacting standards, a younger brother brimming with restless ambition, and a court of advisers who judged every word, gesture, and glance. He had grown accustomed to appearances, to duty above desire. but Isabella unsettled him in ways he did not yet understand. Within their small moments of intimacy, the world faded. In the library, they shared thoughts on literature and politics. In the gardens, they debated social reform and philosophy. And yet, beneath every smile and careful conversation, a shadow loomed. Isabella carried a secret known to none. Her family's fortune was barely enough to maintain appearances, and a single misstep could spell ruin. She had refused a richer suitor, not for love of Gabriel alone, but out of an instinctive desire to shield him from the shame of being tied to a family in decline. This choice, unspoken and unseen, would soon be misinterpreted as betrayal. Meanwhile, Gabriel's own circle whispered doubts. Friends, distant relatives, and even trusted advisors murmured of Isabella's ambitions, her supposed desire for wealth or status. Why else, they asked, would she hesitate when a duke proposes? But the truth was far simpler, far more painful. Sacrifice. Isabella's greatest fear was not losing Gabriel's love, but seeing him turn from her in scorn, convinced she had deceived him. Every curt glance he sent her in public, the disdain he displayed at the last Almack's gathering, was a dagger to her chest. And yet, she bore it with dignity, hiding the turmoil beneath delicate gloves and gowns of muted color. Even her closest friend, Lady Cecily Morton, noticed the strain. "You carry this too heavily, Isabella," Cecily whispered one evening, her eyes wide in the candlelight. "No woman should endure such cruelty from a man who claims to care for her." Isabella only smiled faintly, pressing a hand to her chest. "It is not cruelty, Cecily. It is misunderstanding, and perhaps one day he will understand." Little did she know, the misunderstanding was rooted in a letter, a confession, a truth she had entrusted to the wrong hands. And while society gossiped, whispering accusations and drawing conclusions, the real story remained locked away, invisible to all but the fates themselves. The summer season in London was at its height, and the town gathered in silks, satins, and diamonds, eager to see and be seen. Lanterns flickered along the polished floors of Grosvenor House, the air thick with perfume, champagne, and whispered speculation. Lady Isabella Langford entered the ballroom with her usual grace, her gown a soft shade of periwinkle that mirrored the early morning sky. For a brief moment, she allowed herself the illusion of lightness, of freedom, but it lasted no more than a heartbeat. Gabriel Ashcombe, Duke of Harrowden, stood near the orchestra, as immovable as marble. When he saw her, his gaze did not soften, it did not even meet hers. Instead, he turned slightly, lips pressed into a thin line, and began a conversation with another lord, his posture deliberate, his attention intentionally elsewhere. A hush rippled through the room. The whispering began almost instantly. "Did you see that? He ignored her completely. After all they shared. How cruel. They say she jilted him for another fortune. Can you believe it?" Isabella felt the familiar stab of shame, sharper this time. Her chest tightened, her hands, gloved and trembling, clutched her fan a little too tightly. She wanted to speak, to explain, but the moment had passed before it could arrive. Gabriel's icy indifference had already sent the message that society would repeat in every drawing room across London. She had betrayed him, yet none of them knew the truth. Not the gossiping duchesses, not the envious debutantes, not even Gabriel himself. The evening scandal did not end there. During the supper that followed, a servant, careless or mischievous, dropped a small sealed envelope near Isabella's chair. She bent to pick it up, recognizing her own handwriting on the wax seal. Her heart leapt. It was the letter. She had written it months before, pouring every truth, every confession, every sacrifice into neat, careful lines. She had entrusted it to a courier who promised it would reach Gabriel safely. But the world had intervened, misplaced, lost, delayed. And now here it lay at her feet, an unspoken bridge between two hearts, yet invisible to the man who needed it most. Before she could retrieve it, a hand landed lightly on her elbow. "Lady Isabella," said a new voice, one she did not recognize immediately. May I escort you to the terrace? The evening air will do you good. She looked up and found herself facing Lord Edmund Carlyle, a distant cousin of Gabriel's. His expression was kind, yet cautious, as if even a casual word might ignite whispers. She nodded, allowing him to lead her away, while the murmurs behind them rose to a roar. Gabriel's eyes, however, had followed her the entire way. A flicker of something, anger, confusion, longing, crossed his features, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. He returned to his companions with deliberate calm, leaving Isabella with the bitter taste of rejection and a question that would haunt her for years. Had he truly turned against her, or was there some other truth that she could not yet see? From that night onward, their fates were sealed in misunderstanding. Every glance in public would carry judgment. Every conversation would be colored by rumors. Every social gathering would be a stage where she was cast as the villain, and he, whether he knew it or not, as the unforgiving judge. And yet, somewhere in the shadows of London, the lost letter waited, its revelation capable of undoing everything, if only it could reach him in time. The summer season in London was at its height, and the town gathered in silks, satins, and diamonds, eager to see and be seen. Lanterns flickered along the polished floors of Grosvenor House, the air thick with perfume, champagne, and whispered speculation. Lady Isabella Langford entered the ballroom with her usual grace, her gown a soft shade of periwinkle that mirrored the early morning sky. For a brief moment, she allowed herself the illusion of lightness, of freedom, but it lasted no more than a heartbeat. Gabriel Ashcombe, Duke of Harrowden, stood near the orchestra, as immovable as marble. When he saw her, his gaze did not soften. It did not even meet hers. Instead, he turned slightly, lips pressed into a thin line, and began a conversation with another lord, his posture deliberate, his attention intentionally elsewhere. A hush rippled through the room. The whispering began almost instantly. "Did you see that?" He ignored her completely. "After all they shared, how cruel! They say she jilted him for another fortune. Can you believe it?" Isabella felt the familiar stab of shame, sharper this time. Her chest tightened, her hands, gloved and trembling, clutched her fan a little too tightly. She wanted to speak, to explain, but the moment had passed before it could arrive. Gabriel's icy indifference had already sent the message that society would repeat in every drawing room across London. She had betrayed him. Yet none of them knew the truth. Not the gossiping duchesses, not the envious debutantes, not even Gabriel himself. The evening scandal did not end there. During the supper that followed, a servant, careless or mischievous, dropped a small, sealed envelope near Isabella's chair. She bent to pick it up, recognizing her own handwriting on the wax seal. Her heart leapt. It was the letter. She had written it months before, pouring every truth, every confession, every sacrifice into neat, careful lines. She had entrusted it to a courier, who promised it would reach Gabriel safely. But the world had intervened, misplaced, lost, delayed, and now here it lay at her feet. An unspoken bridge between two hearts, yet invisible to the man who needed it most. Before she could retrieve it, a hand landed lightly on her elbow. "Lady Isabella," said a new voice, one she did not recognize immediately. "May I escort you to the terrace? The evening air will do you good." She looked up and found herself facing Lord Edmund Carlyle, a distant cousin of Gabriel's. His expression was kind yet cautious, as if even a casual word might ignite whispers. She nodded, allowing him to lead her away, while the murmurs behind them rose to a roar. Gabriel's eyes, however, had followed her the entire way. A flicker of something, anger, confusion, longing, crossed his features, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. He returned to his companions with deliberate calm, leaving Isabella with the bitter taste of rejection and a question that would haunt her for years. Had he truly turned against her? Or was there some other truth that she could not yet see? From that night onward, their fates were sealed in misunderstanding. Every glance in public would carry judgment. Every conversation would be colored by rumors. Every social gathering would be a stage where she was cast as the villain, and he, whether he knew it or not, as the unforgiving judge. And yet, somewhere in the shadows of London, the lost letter waited, its revelation capable of undoing everything, if only it could reach him in time. The stage had been set. The first seeds of years-long disdain had taken root. The autumn air had grown crisp, and London's streets were awash with the russet glow of fading leaves. Yet inside the gilded halls of Harrowden House and the Langford estate, tempers and hearts remained hotter than ever. Lady Isabella Langford moved carefully through society, always measured, always poised, but each encounter with Gabriel was like walking a tightrope over a pit of fire. His icy gaze followed her, unwavering and unyielding, at every ball, every dinner, every theater performance. He mocked no words, but the quiet disdain in his posture, shoulders stiff, lips pressed, eyes deliberately averted, was a sentence in itself. Society noticed, of course. Whispers followed her through crowded rooms, carried by servants, debutantes, and idle gentlemen. Every curt nod, every polite dismissal was amplified into scandal. Yet Isabella endured it all, hiding behind elegant gowns and steady smiles, while within, her heart ached for the man who had once adored her. Gabriel, for his part, wrestled with his own turmoil. He did not fully understand why he had grown distant, why her presence brought a mixture of irritation and longing. He had heard the rumors. He had even begun to believe them. And so he acted as society expected him to, with disdain, coldly, publicly, so no one could question his honor. Despite the tension, there were moments when the old bond shimmered through the surface, subtle and fleeting, like moonlight on water. It happened one chilly November evening at a charity auction. Isabella had been tasked with presenting a set of rare botanical illustrations, her own work, painstakingly detailed. She moved with elegance and confidence, lifting her sketches for the assembled crowd to admire. Yet all her courage wavered when she caught Gabriel's eyes in the corner of the room. He was seated beside Lady Marjorie Fenton, laughing at some trivial joke, yet the shadow of his glance never left her. She felt both exposed and seen in the same heartbeat. After the auction, she wandered into the gardens to collect herself. The air was sharp, scented with frost and evergreens, and for a moment the city seemed far away. "You've grown quite skilled," a voice said softly behind her. She turned, expecting another observer or admirer, and found Gabriel standing there, his hands tucked into the pockets of his coat, eyes guarded. "I thank you, Your Grace," she said, curtsying lightly, unsure of the tone he intended. He said nothing at first, merely studied her, as though attempting to decipher some hidden truth. Then finally he spoke. "Why do you persist in facing the world alone, Lady Isabella? Surely it is not for pride?" Her heart trembled at the question, but she forced herself to remain composed. "Because the world has already judged me," she replied softly, "and I must endure it as I can." He regarded her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then without another word, he turned and walked back toward the house, leaving her shivering not from the cold, but from the storm of emotions he had stirred. This pattern repeated itself over the months. Fleeting glimpses of warmth, quickly eclipsed by public coldness. Whispers continued, friends whispered warnings, and Isabella began to realize that no amount of patience could erase the perception that she had wronged him. Even Lord Langford fretted, pacing the corridors of his estate. "She will not survive this, Isabella," he warned one evening, eyes anxious. "You must find a way to make him understand, or all is lost." She could not explain the truth. She could not reveal the sacrifice she had made for his sake. The letter, her only hope, remained lost. And so she suffered in silence, while the world painted her as the villain of a story she had not written. Yet despite the coldness, a spark of unspoken connection lingered, like embers beneath ashes, waiting for the wind to blow. And deep within, Gabriel remained unaware that every dismissive glance, every harsh word, only tightened the invisible threads that still bound them together. Winter had begun to settle over London, cloaking the city in fog and frost. Candles flickered in the drawing rooms, reflecting off crystal chandeliers, but they did little to brighten the hearts of those trapped in misunderstanding and unspoken truths. Lady Isabella Langford had just returned from an evening at the Duchess of Fenton's salon, her carriage rattling through empty streets. Her hands, wrapped in soft gloves, clutched a small parcel she had received from a courier earlier that day, a parcel she had almost dismissed as trivial. Inside was a letter, aged slightly and sealed with a crest she instantly recognized. Her pulse raced. Could it truly be what she feared, or what she had prayed for? It was the letter, the same letter she had written years ago, the one meant to explain everything, the one that could clear her name and reveal the sacrifice she had made for Gabriel. With trembling hands, she broke the seal. Every carefully chosen word, every confession of intent, every piece of her heart lay bare upon the page. She had refused to marry for wealth, had rejected a fortune that might have saved her family from ruin, and had done so solely to protect Gabriel's reputation and honor. Tears blurred her vision as she read. Finally, the truth would be known, but the revelation did not come quietly. That very evening, Gabriel Ashcombe, Duke of Harrowden, had arrived at the Whitmore estate for a private meeting with Lord Langford. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held an intensity that made Isabella's stomach flutter. Before she could summon courage to speak, Gabriel spoke first. "I have received a letter," he said slowly, voice low and controlled. "A letter I did not expect, but one I cannot ignore." Isabella's breath caught. She realized with dawning horror and hope that the letter must be the one she had sent, the one that had never reached him until now. Gabriel continued, every word measured, every pause a dagger to her chest. "It seems there has been a misunderstanding." She swallowed, struggling to steady her voice. "A misunderstanding, Your Grace?" He met her gaze, and for the first time in years, the cold armor of disdain slipped. His eyes softened, not fully, but enough that she dared hope. "You have suffered more than I ever imagined, Isabella. I believed what I was told and I acted foolishly. But the truth changes everything." She felt the weight of those words, the burden she had carried alone, finally beginning to lift. Yet the letter, though it explained her actions, could not undo the years of whispers, glances, and cruelty. Gabriel's pride, her own dignity, the expectations of society, they all demanded reconciliation that was more than mere words. And still, beneath the frost of years-long estrangement, a spark remained. A spark that threatened to ignite into something neither could resist. For the first time, they both understood the stakes. Love had not been lost, only delayed. But the path to reunion would not be simple. Outside, the wind howled through the darkened streets of London, as if echoing the turbulence that swirled within their hearts. And in that storm of revelation, both Isabella and Gabriel knew one undeniable truth. Their lives could no longer remain the same. The question lingered in the frozen air, an unspoken dare, a whisper of possibility. Would love survive the scars of betrayal, misunderstanding, and pride? The first snows of winter had settled over London, blanketing the city in deceptive serenity. Within the walls of Harrowden House and the Langford estate, however, hearts were anything but peaceful. Though Gabriel had finally read the letter and glimpsed the truth, pride and society's scrutiny still held him in a vice. Whispers of betrayal, malicious gossip, and old rumors clung to Isabella like shadows. Every glance they exchanged in public was a trial. Every attempt at reconciliation risked a renewed scandal. And then came the blow that neither could have anticipated. A messenger arrived at Whitmore Manor bearing a formal note from the Harrowden estate. The Duke's mother, the formidable Dowager Duchess, had insisted that Gabriel end the engagement at once, publicly and decisively. The letter cited propriety, family honor, and the unshakable expectations of society. Isabella felt her chest tighten as she read it. Her heart which had just dared to hope, now sank. The sacrifice she had made, the years she endured disgrace for Gabriel's sake, seemed meaningless in the face of unbending aristocratic power. Gabriel himself arrived that evening, face pale and stormed with conflicted emotions. He had wanted to fight for Isabella, but the weight of duty, his mother's unyielding influence, and his own fear of further scandal had tied his hands. "I cannot," he began, voice cracking. I, I am bound by duty, Isabella. My family, they will not allow this. I cannot risk everything we have for—" "Love?" she whispered, cutting him off, her own voice trembling. Gabriel looked away, shame burning his cheeks. "I fear that love alone is not enough. The world is cruel, Isabella, and I cannot shield you from it. I, I will not bring ruin upon your name, nor my own." Her knees weakened, and she sank onto a velvet chaise, covering her face with trembling hands. Years of endurance, the secret sacrifices, the silent suffering, it all collided in one devastating moment. "You endured so much for me, and I—" Gabriel faltered, unable to finish the sentence. But the damage was done. The society that had once whispered only behind fans now murmured with conviction. The engagement was over, the Duke's disdain justified, and Isabella yet again, the tragic figure in a story she had not written. Outside, the streets were slick with ice, wind cutting like a knife, mirroring the cold despair within both their hearts. Even her closest friend, Lady Cecily, arrived only to find Isabella pale and exhausted, grief etched into her features. "She must leave London for a while," Cecily said softly. "You cannot survive the scrutiny. And Gabriel, he must act before his family destroys him both." And as Isabella gazed out the frosted window, the realization sank in with a cruel weight. For the first time in years, she felt truly powerless. The man she loved, the man who could have understood everything, was being forced away by forces neither of them could control. In that moment, Isabella whispered a silent vow into the night. No matter the obstacles, no matter the scandal, no matter the years it took, she would endure, she would survive, and she would ensure the truth, once lost, would finally bring justice and love to its rightful place. The snow fell heavier that night, blanketing London in silence, while two hearts, separated by pride, duty, and circumstance, ached with longing and uncertainty. Spring arrived quietly in London, bringing with it the scent of blooming lilacs and the soft hum of life awakening from winter's grip. For Lady Isabella Langford, the world had begun to shift as well, though cautiously and with lingering trepidation. She had left London after that harsh winter, retreating to the Langford estate in Kent. Days were spent tending to her gardens, sketching, and reflecting, while letters from Gabriel, carefully worded and sparse, arrived at intervals that both tormented and thrilled her. One afternoon, while examining a newly bloomed camellia in the greenhouse, she received an unexpected visitor, a young messenger, breathless and anxious, carrying a second letter, this one unmistakably in Gabriel's hand. With trembling fingers, she broke the seal. The words were simple, but their weight struck her like lightning. "Isabella, I can endure no more of this silence. I will not allow my family's fears to dictate my heart. Meet me at Harrowden Manor, alone. Come and let us speak truth, without shadows between us." Her heart leapt. The spark of hope, long buried beneath layers of despair, began to burn bright again. For the first time in months, she dared to believe that love could survive, not just endure, but triumph. The journey to Harrowden Manor was swift and tense. As she approached the gates, memories of the years they had lost together surged through her. Moments of joy, the stolen glances in ballrooms, whispered laughter in the gardens, and the ache of absence that had never truly left her. Gabriel met her at the entrance, his coat dusted with the light spring rain, eyes dark and intense. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The world seemed to pause. "Isabella," he finally whispered, his voice unsteady, "I have been a fool. I let pride and fear dictate my actions, and for that, I, I am sorry." She felt a tremor of relief, but the past weighed heavily. "Gabriel, 4 years of whispers, of doubt, of humiliation. Can we simply set that aside?" He stepped closer, closing the distance that had been stretched by time and misunderstanding. "No, we cannot erase the past, but we can face it together. I will not let them, or the world, or my own pride keep us apart any longer." For the first time in years, Isabella allowed herself to smile, tentative but genuine. She realized that the power of truth, of sacrifice, and of unwavering love could finally overcome the barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. In that moment, the lost letter, the confession that had been delayed so cruelly, was no longer just paper and ink. It had become a symbol of endurance, of courage, and of the unwavering bond that still tied their hearts. Gabrielle reached for her hand, and she did not hesitate. The contact was electric, a silent acknowledgement that the tides of their lives were turning. Outside, the wind whispered through the budding trees, carrying a promise. Love, when patient and steadfast, could endure even the harshest winters, the deepest misunderstandings, and the cruelest fates. And though the road ahead still required courage, they had found the key. Together, truth and love could conquer everything. Harrowden Manor was alive with the golden glow of candlelight and the soft murmur of evening preparations. For months, Gabriel had planned this moment, an honest confrontation, a final claim to the truth that had long been denied. Lady Isabella arrived quietly, the spring air carrying the scent of lilacs and wet earth. She had rehearsed her words 1,000 times, but the reality of facing Gabriel, the man who had once turned from her in public disdain, made her pulse quicken. Gabriel was waiting in the library where the fire crackled warmly, throwing flickering light across rows of leather-bound books. He rose as she entered, bowing slightly, but his eyes, dark, unwavering, and full of emotion, told her everything she needed to know. "No intermediaries tonight," he said, voice firm but gentle. "Only the truth. Only us." She nodded, placing the long-awaited letter on the table between them. The seal had already been broken, but the words remained intact. "Everything, everything is here," she whispered. "All I wanted was for you to understand that I did not betray you, that I endured everything. For your sake, for both our sakes." Gabriel took the letter into his hands, scanning it carefully, each word seeming to unravel years of misunderstanding. When he finally looked up, his eyes met hers, filled with remorse and awe. "Isabella, I have been blind," he admitted. "Blind to your courage, your sacrifice, your love. I punished you with my silence and coldness, and I will never forgive myself for the pain I caused you." Tears threatened to spill from her eyes, but she smiled through them. "You do not need forgiveness, Gabriel. I only needed you to see the truth." He stepped closer, taking both her hands in his. "And now I do, and I will spend the rest of my life proving it to you." The weight of society's gossip, the cruelty of years-long misunderstanding, even the formidable opposition of his mother, all seemed insignificant in that moment. Gabriel's mother had sent word that she had reconsidered, recognizing Isabella's virtue and the depth of her love for her son. The whispers of London, powerless against the force of truth, had faded into irrelevance. Gabriel knelt, not as a duke commanding a title, but as a man humbled by love. "Isabella Langford, will you allow me to restore your happiness? Will you allow me to love you openly, without fear, without shame, as I should have from the beginning?" Isabella's breath caught, her heart swelling with the culmination of years of endurance. "Yes, Gabriel. Yes, I will." He rose and drew her close, their lips meeting in a gentle, reverent kiss. A kiss that spoke of redemption, understanding, in the triumph of enduring love. Outside, the first blooms of spring glimmered in the gardens, a testament to renewal. Inside, two hearts that had been tested by pride, scandal, and silence now beat together in harmony. The lost letter, once the cause of separation, had become the key to reunion. Years of suffering, whispers, and heartbreak had finally led to this. Truth, sacrifice, and love conquering all. The storm of misunderstanding had passed. In its wake was light, laughter, and the promise of a shared future. A future built on honesty, devotion, and the resilience of hearts that refused to give up. Summer had returned to the English countryside, golden sunlight spilling over the rolling hills and gardens of Harrowden Manor. The estate, once a backdrop for whispers and scandal, now echoed with laughter and the gentle hum of life restored. Lady Isabella Langford moved gracefully through the gardens, her hand in Gabriel's, the soft warmth of his presence a comfort she had longed for across years of pain. No longer did she feel the heavy weight of judgment or the sting of public scorn. The world had realigned itself around truth, love, and the sacrifices that had once gone unseen. Gabriel watched her with eyes that brimmed with admiration and affection. "You are more remarkable than I ever dared imagine, Isabella," he said softly, "not because of what you endured, but because of how you endured it, with courage and grace." Isabella smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "And you," she whispered, "you finally see me. Not the gossip, not the misjudged story. Just me." The months of estrangement, of misunderstanding, of longing, had forged something stronger than fleeting affection. They had survived society's cruelty, family expectations, and the cruel timing of fate. What remained was an unbreakable bond built on trust, sacrifice, and unwavering love. In the library, the lost letter, once a symbol of pain and miscommunication, was carefully framed, a reminder that truth and patience could overcome even the darkest trials. Every guest who visited Harrowden Manor in the years to come would hear the story of Isabella's resilience and Gabriel's eventual recognition of her courage. Friends and family rejoiced at their union. Lady Cecily, ever faithful, toasted to Isabella's steadfast heart and Gabriel's eventual wisdom. The Dowager Duchess, once formidable and unyielding, had grown to admire Isabella deeply, recognizing that true character and loyalty were rarer than wealth or title. And amidst the gentle murmur of the manor, Isabella and Gabriel found moments of quiet intimacy. The stolen walks through the gardens, shared books in the sunlit library, and laughter echoing in halls that had once held only whispers. Love, once tested, now thrived in freedom and peace. As the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and rose, Gabriel turned to Isabella, taking both her hands in his. "We have endured much," he said, voice tender, "but we have endured it together, and that makes everything we've faced worthwhile." She smiled, her heart full. "Yes, Gabriel, together we have everything." The story of their love, once clouded by misunderstanding and societal expectation, had finally found its rightful ending, joyful, triumphant, and true. And as you followed Isabella and Gabriel's journey, I want to ask you, have you ever faced a moment where the truth was delayed, yet love or friendship endured? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories, wherever you're watching from. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so we can explore more tales of sacrifice, courage, and love together.